Welcome to the Subvert podcast.
Wow, that was a little too intimate.
A little too much.
A little too intimate for my liking.
Okay, all right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Subvert podcast. Thank you for joining us again. We really appreciate you coming here to let us operate the brain kiosk, the build a brain kiosk in your brain. Today, as always, I've got Alex Knight, the producer extraordinaire.
How's it going?
Kristin Rumohr, the master of ceremonies.
Hello.
And I, as always, am Aaron Stewart, here again with the Subvert podcast. What are we talking about today? Oh, energy. Sure. Energy in general. Is that the one?
The lack thereof in this show.
Oh my goodness gracious. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Sorry, I wanted to start it off a little more energetic than that. Hey. Oh, sorry. Settling back down. Okay. Okay.
So energy.
And the usage thereof and the transference and yeah.
So we're talking what is it, right? Like we're talking about the energy that surrounds us, how we're connected, how we think, why we're conscious, right? All of this is kind of wrapped up in energy as far as I'm concerned.
I kind of want to
start with the whole Reiki thing. Kristin, you're a Reiki master, and I really want to, what got you into Reiki in general?
I got into it. I'm a counseling psychologist as well. And then I just kind of found working with clients that there was always something a bit more there, right? So you can talk about things as much as you want, but when it comes to actually articulating emotion, I found a lot of people weren't able to actually fully put a name to what it is they're feeling, right? So it kind of got me thinking and digging a little deeper and doing some research. And then it brought me back to this concept of energy, right? So everything that we think, we feel is really just like an energetic pulse running through our bodies. And then our brains have to have that, not so easy job of interpreting what that means. But sometimes you just can't. Right? Maybe it's something you haven't experienced before, or maybe there's something you haven't encountered to actually have a word to attach to it, right? Mm-hmm. So I got into Reiki then is how do you tap into that, right? How do you allow people to kind of feel and process when there aren't words to actually describe it? You can't physically move through it by talking it out. So that's kind of my initial experience with it. And I took it from there and studied for the last couple of years, and I find it absolutely incredible. So I've noticed a huge shift with clients. If I do Reiki, say before a counseling session, it tends to actually move a lot of that energy so that when it comes now time to speaking about it, that weight is almost gone, that expectation of, I have to find words to put to this, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So It just kind of lets you articulate it in a different way instead of just talking about our standard range of emotional content.
Yeah, well, it helps move it through, right? Because what happens is we kind of get stuck at the level of our brains, right? Like when we let our brain control everything, don't we know it?
Oh, heck yeah. That's kind of the point of this whole thing we're doing.
So if we try so much to logic our way through things, we just create a block, right? Yeah. Because again, no one can argue the fact that energy does move. It flows. It has to, right? So if you're stopping it at a particular point, well, then it's not completing its journey. Therefore, you're going to get more blocked up. Therefore, you're going to have more kind of issues and frustration or whatever it is you're going through. So allowing it to actually move and flow through kind of then allows it to flow out at the same time, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Right? So you're then making room for new things to come in because you're releasing that blockage.
So it's the difference of a battery with stored energy and a battery that's actually being used for energy.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, actually. Yeah. Well, because a stored energy battery is eventually going to run out. It's going to die. Right?
Exactly.
It only has so much, right? You need to keep the current going.
And that energy is still dissipating out into, space, I guess, or the area around it. But it's not being used for a purpose.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's all going somewhere, right? I mean, energy can never be created or destroyed, right? It's basic physics. Right. So that's the interesting concept as well, is that we are, in theory, all connected in this way. right? So my energy is going to be your energy at some point in time, or your energy, or, like all of our viewers. We have at one point actually been each other in theory, right? Just because of how energy does flow. And even at the basic level, say the air we breathe, right? We take in energy from that. We, move it through our bodies. We exhale it, and it's going to make its way around. And I know you've brought this up a few times, Aaron, the idea that we've actually are breathing the same air as our ancestors, thousands of years ago.
Mm-hmm. Like sharing air particles with.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, everything else as well. That's just,
I really don't want to share my air particles with you, to be honest with you. Not right now.
Well, too
Not
bad.
during a pandemic.
Yeah. And that's the idea that we all have this shared, energy, that comes from kind of the earth itself, that we kind of have, accumulated over the course of millennia of the sun hitting, plants and converting into, and that energy being stored and used and stored and used and stored and used, and changing shape and moving into different forms and becoming different things. And and eventually here we are. And so the idea that our energy, that the energy that makes up me is separate from the energy that makes up you, it seems, a little bit. And I wonder whether that's something that, humans have kind of engineered for us to be able to deal, as a society with each other. I wonder if it's a defense mechanism that we've kind of erected these walls around ourselves instead of allowing ourselves to kind of, react as if you are me and I am you. And right, we don't have to have these walls in front of us because they don't really exist anyway. Is it kind of just a self-defense mechanism that we do this to ourselves?
Well, that's interesting, is where did this idea of separation come from? Because that's kind of the common thread of almost all dogma, whether it be spiritual or religion, is that the great divide came at that separation from oneness, right? Like every religion across, that's our downfall, is we forgot that we're all kind of one. We're one being, essentially. We're one universe. We're one life force, right? So what happened to make us all forget that and actually fight so hard against it? Right? Especially Western culture. It's all very individualistic.
Has become, definitely, very much so. And I think that's a lot of kind of the issue that we face, lately, is just how do we deal with this hyper individualism, right? Of you're going to do what you want to do just because you want to do it. Right. And the consequences to the people around you are irrelevant. That doesn't make any sense to me. It just, the idea that what I do affects others was ingrained in me very early on. And I don't understand where we don't have this feeling of, what you're putting out there is what you're going to get back. If you're feeling positive, if you're putting positive out there, that really the only thing that can be around you is, you can't let negativity in you if all you have is positivity. It's kind of one of those weird, right? And that was, it's a matter of mindfulness, of kind of being aware that the things that happen to you aren't necessarily negative. They just are. Right? You make them negative by your experiences, your associations with, and you, right? Like when you were 2, this happened to you and your parents went, no, don't do that. And so you went, and so now you just don't ever, and you have that visceral in the back of your head reaction instead of actually a logical,
well, it's our evolved brains getting in our own way again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're right. I like to say this to clients all the time. I'm like, a thought is just a thought until you attach meaning to it. Like there's no such thing as a negative thought or a positive thought. You decide, what it is. It's just a thought.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Those are all concepts that we've created. They're just not, those concepts don't exist in nature. Human beings have invented those.
Well, absolutely. And we've got this massive processing machine up here that's capable of so much more than we even know, right? Like we've barely scraped the surface on what these things can actually do.
Yeah.
So it's just this massive supercomputer trying to make sense of all this data, and you need to organize it in some way. So it makes sense that it's based off of experience and whatever else. But at some point, we've developed this kind of ego that takes control and decides that this is the only way things can be seen. This is the only way things can be done, right? And all these walls start coming up.
I feel like
anything that acts different.
Yeah. I feel like this is also slipping into quantum entanglement theory and all of that sort of stuff. You know what I mean?
It always does.
Mm-hmm. It always does.
It's a very fascinating subject and something that you could talk about that for forever.
Well, because that kind of is the underpinning behind all of it, as far as I'm concerned, is the idea that as far as science is concerned, there is no discernible difference between this and that and whatever. Right. Mm-hmm. You can measure it in terms of our physical reality here, but when you really break things down to the quantum realm, it all falls apart. And suddenly this isn't that, and that's this, and suddenly they're existing in the same place and time. How is that? What? No, come on. And now they've found a universe apparently that's running backwards to ours.
Yeah, I was about to get into that. It was like different kind of parallel universes. Yeah.
So just
hold on, because I've never heard of this.
I know. Hey,
how does that work?
How does that work? I know.
I
mean, I'm certainly not a physicist, so I couldn't give you the technical
I think it's very clear none of us are.
But that's just the idea that exists, right? Like whether you understand it like we don't understand any of this shit. We're poking at the edges of all of this. We have no idea, right? But just the idea that running parallel to ours in exactly the same space as us is an exact replica of this universe that runs in the opposite direction. So at this exact second, there's copies of me running both forwards and backwards in time.
You're scaring
me. Right?
I mean, we created the concept of time anyways, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's a very human thing. It doesn't actually exist linearly like we think it does. Again, we've just attached some meaning to it. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense. And I think I was reading something the other day. Again, I'm not a physicist, but it was the only way to mathematically describe why certain particles were acting in a certain way when they were broken down to this level. Yeah. The only mathematical way it worked was when the addition of different universes. So I think it's string theory that has found, I think it's 9 different kind of parallel universes, and that explains mathematically why this phenomenon could occur. Yeah. Right? We can't see the actual universe, but again, we're using science and logic. This explains it. So how fascinating is that, right?
Yeah, it's when they run models
9 different versions of us.
They try 7 universes. Nope, that didn't work. 8 universes. Nope, that didn't work. 10 universes. Nope, that didn't work either. How about 12? No, 9. Oh, hey, look at that. Right? Like, and that's all it is again just us poking at the edges of this stuff and trying to figure out what exactly. Like, oh, that made that twitch. Okay, cool. Right? But without that, where would we be? Right? Like without science to be able to say to us, oh, but if you poke this does that. And you can do that over and over again, and it keeps on. We don't know why, but it keeps on doing it. Right?
I'm just, I've been the two of you have been talking. I've been looking at this Wikipedia article on quantum states and how they define pure states, and there's just a bunch of like quantum equations here. I'm like, none of this makes any sense to me. All I'm hearing, I'm reading this back, and what's that character from The Simpsons? The one, that professor that sounds like Jerry Lewis,
Professor Frank.
Listen to this. Hold on. Consider 2 arbitrary quantum systems, A and B, with respective Hilbert spaces, HA and HB. The Hilbert space of the composite system is the tensor product, HA times HB. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And that's where, like, I've read Hawking, I've read some, a bunch of physics, and usually it's when you get to the equations part where I just kind of skip over and move to the, right. I'll get back to that. If I really want to learn the equations of how this physics stuff, no, thanks.
Yeah, that's too much for me.
Too much.
Mm-hmm.
And how does this tie into? How does this tie into consciousness? We were, this is something that we were going to talk about a while ago. Aaron, you actually posted a really interesting link here on, do birds have consciousness? Are they smarter than we actually think? Are they as aware as human beings are? And there have been studies about this.
Yeah, I mean, we lived onto this very myopic view that we were the only ones that had any kind of consciousness for the longest time, and that animals were just here for us to kick around, essentially.
Well, that's
Right?
kind of
That's
arrogant.
I believe it's there's a by biblical term for it, dominus, so where essentially God gave us dominion over the earth and all of its plants and animals to do with as we will.
Yeah.
And so basically it's this biblical directive that, hey, yeah, whatever, just go kick them. They don't fucking care. I put them here for you to do. They're your food. You can just do whatever you want with these things, right? And that's how we've been operating for millennia now, is that, oh, God told us it's cool. Okay, cool. Let's just go kill those things. Without ever thinking, hey, wait a minute. No, they're actually watching us do this, and they're aware that we're doing this to them. Wait, does that imply some sort of, don't worry about it, just eat them? Right? Like, and the idea that we domesticated wolves because they were cool, but all these other animals were meat.
I mean, in some parts of the world, dogs are, but.
And that's kind of the thing, and that's where it's the idea that, if you don't think about the idea that animals feel pain, it's very easy for you to just wander around killing things without any thought, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as you actually poke one and go, oh, wait a minute, right? Like, no, he actually felt that, didn't he? The things start to unravel. It's right when you watch these videos of the slaughterhouses and you just go, where, it's just that bit of empathy. And I just go, anyone that doesn't feel that empathy, needs to have some sort of examination being done here, right? Like, I feel that that's part of the disconnect that we have, is that if we can't even connect to the animals and plants around us, how are we supposed to connect to this person that's actually trying to communicate with us on any kind of, level that we don't agree with immediately? How are we supposed to get past our biases if I can't even get you past the bias that this animal feels pain when you kick it?
Yeah, and speaking of animals, feeling pain, have you heard of this French delicacy where there's this little tiny bird that I think it's called the ortolan, and they basically keep on feeding it until it reaches maximum, like, peak fatness. They drown the thing in cognac and then cook it. Isn't that horrific?
Wow.
First time
I
I
mean,
heard
if I had
that,
to
I'm
choose
like,
a way to die, drowning in cognac.
I mean, it's one thing to
right.
kill an animal, to kill an animal humanely, quickly, in order to feed your
But
family, but to drown it in cognac, that is just horrifying.
I just laugh. The idea of humanely killing something.
Well,
what? How does that? What? Like, what?
There are worse ways to kill
They
an
really
animal.
enjoyed it when you killed them. Like,
There's ways to be, like, I guess, respectful of the animal, right? I worked at this steakhouse years and years ago, and they got their meat from a family farm, so I went to go and visit it. And in, like, the slaughter room, they would actually take the cows the night before, and they had this, like, little nursery almost for them, and someone would sit with them all night, and they would cuddle the cow, right? And they'd have a blanket, and they'd play music, and I was like, okay, I mean, if you're gonna respectfully kill an animal, that's a nice way to do it.
And then they woke up in the morning and blam, right in the
Yeah. I mean, depends on how you look at it. That's also maybe kind of cruel, right? Like, I'm gonna make you feel totally safe. Nothing's wrong.
Yeah, it's all good. You're all fine. Blam! Like, it's still, the end result is exactly the same.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, the meat tastes different or something. I don't know. It's that's been my issue. It's been harder for me to justify the eating of other things.
I think it extends, I mean, pretty far. Obviously, for animals, it's much more clear that they can feel pain and everything else. But then is it necessarily the answer going veggie, right? Because arguably the thing is still alive, right? So there is still something, we'll call it, like the universal energy that animates whatever it is, plant or animal, right? Some energy has come into it to make that thing living.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I mean, it's kind of the same concept when you're killing anything, you're killing its life force.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where, like, I'm big on balance, so I don't necessarily think that we should just stop all eating meat, but I think there definitely needs to be some sort of addressing of the balance of it, right?
Oh, definitely. There's no reason you need to have meat 3 times a day with every meal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Are you
and I
sure
mean, I
about
know
that?
guys that are like that. I work in construction, and there's guys that eat meat at every meal, and I'm just like,
Right.
you know, and they've got their freezers full of meat, and it's just, yeah, you know, you put something green and leafy on their plate, and they're going, "What the fuck's that?" Which sounds like an exaggeration, but it really isn't. You know, it's, yeah, you know, it's, yeah. And again, you just think about kind of the energy that they're putting out, the energy they're taking in. You know, what you put into you is going to affect the energy that you have to put out, right? So if you're filling your face with garbage, I find it hard to believe that you're going to be operating at any kind of capacity that's above.
Yeah, you're not going to be winning any Olympic medals anytime soon. But you're right. I mean,
Unless
You know,
it's
and
like
that's
bacon.
like many things, it's life is about balance. It should be about balance, right?
mhm.
So
Absolutely.
yes, three meals a day with meat in every single meal, that's completely unreasonable. Does anybody
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
do that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I come from a grandpa's operated the farm since the day he was born, basically. So I come from a meat producing family, you know, and the cousins who are farmers and the whole thing. So I kind of started there, and they're the eat meat whenever they can kind of, and that's right. That's their thing. But I have noticed that they all are, you know, at least 100 pounds overweight and have been their entire lives. And, you know, that's their choice. And you can't really say, hey, you know, that's probably going to kill you at some point, right? Like, I mean, that's grandpa's 95 and he's been 300 pounds his entire life. Love him to death, right? And nothing wrong with that choice. But I just go, you know, if I want to lift 150, you know, and the idea that I'm going to do it old and decrepit, nope, no thanks. I'm going to do everything I can to get to, you know, the best, like, you know, best end I can get to, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I don't think meat's the answer for that.
I was going to ask you guys what you think of the idea of, we'll call it karmic energy, right? Kind of what you said earlier, the idea of what you take in is kind of what you put out there. And I know there's a lot of people that kind of argue. Some people say, no, that's all nonsense, right? When you talk about raising your vibrational level, your frequency, your karma. So I was going to ask you guys, what do you think about that? Do you think that there is kind of this system of checks and balance in the universe, keeping score?
No, I don't believe in any of that. I mean, I believe that the whole thing about you get what you put out there. I mean, yeah, I think that logically makes sense. I mean, if I treat people reasonably and humanely with kindness, and I show everyone kindness, you know, even my enemies, I think that only helps you in the end. But yeah, I think the universe is too chaotic and too random to ascribe. I don't think we know enough about how the universe works. I think it would be arrogant to say that there's some kind of organization to all of this, that like the whole concept to me of karma doesn't really make sense to me. Aaron?
And there's been
Kristen?
I like to think that when we leave here, we get to go back and look through how we connected to others.
Okay.
And I figure if there was any kind of definition of karma, that would be it, right? Being able at the end of you to be like, and you know, they talk about how when you die, you get this flash of all the things that, you know, you go back through your past and you have all this experience go through you, right? Before you see the white light or whatever, right? And I think that's kind of your brain running through all of that stuff, and kind of, I'd like to think that you get to actually go back and see these choices that you made and how they affected the people around you. You get to kind of pull yourself out of you and see the grander scheme of what exactly happened there. Okay.
Yeah.
And whether that kind of makes you feel proud of who you were or not determines kind of where you go. I don't know how that, like, as far as our brains are wired and concerned, I think that, whether it's even just a flash, that last little gasp of energy as we go out, I think that's basically the definition of heaven or hell or whatever is where our brain takes us at the end. And unfortunately, a lot of us have bad wiring up there, which can lead to, a lot of it, leading you down a bad path,
So you think the idea of karma is like self-imposed then, right? As opposed to this idea of some universal master standing there with a notebook.
Horace
keeping
with
score.
his scales, going, oh, your sins outweighed the feather or whatever it was, right? Like, I don't know that there's any. I think that we are the arbiters of our own existence, essentially.
That I think that makes sense. I agree with a lot of that of what you just said. I mean, I see examples of this all the time. Like I go out of my way to treat people well, to do things for people, to show my appreciation for them, and I don't ask for anything in return, but I definitely see the results of how when I go out of my way to do things for people, that eventually at some point that is like they pay it forward, either back to me or to someone else. Like I do see the results of that when I go out of my way to do that.
Doesn't it feel nice to share a smile with someone?
Right.
Just like, you hold the door open for someone and they give you a smile. Isn't that nice? Right? Like, again, it's about, how we view the experiences coming into us, that defines kind of, how we're going to react to things moving forward. And, and I think that kind of, if we just rewire a lot of, it's part of this mindfulness, exercise, hopefully, to just kind of be aware of what's happening and coming into you and assimilating it in a positive manner instead of trying, viewing everything with this negative slant. I think we've a lot of the 2020, hopefully the lesson there will be that if we look at everything negatively, everything will be negative, right? I'm sure there were positive things that happened last year, right?
Yeah.
they're just really hard to find.
Yeah. I really like what Alex Trebek said. One of his final statements on Jeopardy right before he died is he said that we need to work harder to build a kinder, gentler society, that we all need to do our part. And that really resonates with me because there's just so much bad behavior. There's so much negativity. There's so much us against them. There's so much just mistrust in science, and we don't believe doctors anymore. We don't believe any What do we believe in? You don't believe in nothing. You don't put your belief in anything. If you can't trust your doctor, you can't trust a scientist. What are you doing? I mean, just think
faith
to me,
in God.
But I just think
basically,
I just think things start to fall apart very quickly if we can't trust our doctors and our scientists anymore. And I'm not saying they're infallible. People make mistakes, but for God's sakes, the amount of people that I see making stupid arguments lately, like suddenly they're an expert in the law. They're an expert on health. They're an expert on science all of a sudden. Everybody's
I watched
fucking
Judge
expert.
Janine Pirro. She's obvious. She's like a judge, isn't she? She's like really, she knows stuff.
Do you guys think that's maybe a product of this too much information society?
Of course.
We touch on this a lot, right? And if the information's out there, then, everyone can feel like an expert. And I was going to ask your guys' opinion on kind of the positivity movement and whether that could actually in some ways be harmful, right? I'm thinking more in terms of kind of self-help and, if you just think positively, you can manifest anything. You see this all the time, just pay me $500 and I'll teach you how to manifest what you want from the universe. And if you just think positively, then your life should be great.
I got a real...
that could be harmful.
I got a real shocker for you. If you think positive thoughts, it doesn't account to... It will not account for anything. You can't
Well,
that expression of if you can do anything if you put your mind to it. No, I'm sorry.
And I kind of agree.
There's a
That's
lot
what
that
we're
you
being
there's a
fed,
lot
right?
that you can't do.
So no wonder people are like depressioners, depression is higher than ever because we're told it's your fault. You
Well,
should
absolutely.
be able to fix it. You should be able to do something. Something's wrong with you.
There's a lot of
You didn't
pie
read
in
the
the
book
sky
right.
thinking, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, the American dream. You're going to come to this country, you're going to build an amazing life, going to get a job, if you work really hard, you will prosper. Well, the sad reality is there's a lot of poor people that work their asses off, that don't make that much money, that are struggling to put food on the table. They probably work, some of the hardest working people are the ones that are making virtually nothing. Okay. So what the fuck is with the American dream? It's bullshit.
Well, my problem is also, I mean, those people work very hard. They save their money over their entire lives, and some asshole at the end of it comes along and swindles them and takes everything.
Well, there's that too.
And I just, that's my problem is that I've watched so many people that spent their lives doing the right thing, and then it just comes and somebody takes it away. And you're just going, wait, that's not what? But they were good. They did their whole positive thinking, right? They went to church and they prayed real hard to Jesus, and Jesus still came and took all their money away. Like, yeah. And that's kind of the issue. It's tough to believe in positivity when there is so much, apparent negativity out there.
Well, I think it's the realization that we really have no control over what happens to us.
Yep.
Right? The majority of things are just circumstance.
Yep.
Right? So the people that get ahead, it's circumstance, whether it be nepotism or just in the right place, right time. Right? And there's no logic behind it.
Well, there's a
Right,
lot there's a lot that you can control, but I think the problem is there is an illusion of control for many aspects of your life. And that's where I think that's just wrong-headed thinking, right? You've got to focus on the stuff that you can control, but there are way too many factors that you can't control. And to get hung up on that is you're just setting yourself up for disappointment, right? There was this preacher, I can't remember his name. I was listening to this hilarious, this preacher was basically calling out COVID-19. He's like COVID-19. Hold on. COVID-19, I will destroy you. Jesus will smite you. And it's just like, it doesn't do anything.
Well, it's when you hear news stories about the protesters at the Capitol who are talking about how they couldn't get COVID because they were covered in Jesus's blood. Praise Jesus.
Oh, God.
And it still brings me
We're
back
doomed.
to religious war. I just want to lock them all in an arena, take your 50 best, and let's see who doesn't get COVID.
Jesus.
Come on, let's do it. Come on. Oh, they all died. Oh, that sucks. I mean, it really sucks. It really does. I did not want that. But they said that their God would protect them. So what do you want me to do? I mean, they signed the waiver, right? Like,
I don't feel like I got a definitive answer from Kristen. Because you asked for our opinion. So how do you feel about this whole thing, about you get what you put out there, karma, all that sort of stuff?
I don't know. I mean, obviously there's a lot of money to be made off of this concept, which people are doing right now, right?
Sure.
The Secret, all of that fun stuff. I think at the end of the day, the only thing we have control over is how we can respond to events that are happening. Right? So whether that event be literally our own thoughts and emotions or what's happening around us, we don't have control over that stimulus, that input, but we do have control in how we respond to them. So in that way, I think you have the choice to respond either in a positive or a negative way. And typically, right, if you kind of respond in a positive way, you're more likely to view things, I think, in a positive manner, because it's training, right? Your brain's a muscle like anything else. So same as if you're, lifting weights to build up your bicep, you're, lifting weights in your brain, so to speak, by choosing your reaction, right? And then the stronger it becomes, the easier it becomes to do.
When I think it becomes a matter of focus, right? Where going back to Reiki, because that's what we were talking about originally. I had seen there's a technique called Kirlian photography, where you can essentially take it's basically a non-conductive plate with a electrical current running through it that you can actually use to basically run current through a photographic plate and basically use a film projection of different things. You can use it for apparently taking a picture of the energy coming out of people's hands. And I've seen pictures of where they just put their hands and they take a picture and then they take a separate picture where they're actually directing energy into their hands. And you can see the difference in the output around it. Like there's a measurable difference in it.
Yeah, there is a lot of studies that has been measured that there is a quantifiable energy change that occurs with Reiki in particular and other kind of modalities like that.
So the idea that our energy projects outside of our form is another interesting aspect of this as well, right? Where it's not just, we're not just affecting this, but like, when I sit up from here, the radiant energy from my ass will have heated up this chair and will have made it.
The powerful
radiate.
ass energy.
Exactly. Like it is pretty, like it'll be warm for a good 5 minutes after this. If you check out the thermal imaging of it, it's still there, right? So, I again, with the idea that we get to go past, I like to think that, like as we are radiating out energy, that is actually affecting what is around us, right? And so I don't necessarily believe in ghosts per se, but I do think that our energy could be kind of perceived as that as we move past. If we had if we were to latch into this, other universe that runs backward to us, we would essentially be seeing ghosts. It wouldn't be us. It would be these images of us as we go the opposite direction kind of thing, right? So the idea that, I'm not technically a ghost here going through this existence and just, perceiving it through this, right? One of the actual interesting bits of this documentary I watched last night called Superhumans was about how your consciousness can sometimes perceive things before your eyes do. Okay. And how, intuition is one of those things that they don't really explain, how sometimes people can just make these mental leaps, and latch onto things that wouldn't be, able for normal people to intuit in any way. Right. The idea that people can, project energy over long distances. One of the experiments they ran in that documentary was they were 1,000 miles away from each other, and she moved this piece of tinfoil sitting on in a hyperbaric chamber that was completely sealed off, had no air movement, had nothing, and it sat there for half an hour not moving, and then when she directed energy at it, it started moving. And you're going, but okay, right? And you go, how do you debunk that? Right? And granted, they didn't show her doing it 3 to 5 times, reproducible result, do it over and over again, get different people to try it kind of thing, right? But apparently this is something that they've been doing seminars about, and people have actual, results with this, basically creating an airtight chamber and being able to move things with the energy that comes out of their existence.
And there's so much we just can't explain, right? Things like this happen. We don't know why it happens, right? Sometimes it's just accepting that there is so much we can't see, right? And like going back to what you were saying about how our energy does kind of radiate outwards. Of course, we're not just this, right? We have an effect, however far that is. I mean, we don't really know, but if you look at the structure of, let's just say, a basic atom, for example, you've got the nucleus, but then you've got everything actually moving around it, which is what's interacting with other things and, creating reactions and phenomena, right? So if we think of ourselves that way, right, we're the nucleus of an atom, but we do have all this energy moving about us, and that's how it interacts. That's how we perceive things. And right.
Well, and also there's just so much about the human brain that we don't understand, and that we probably will never truly unlock every aspect of. Right.
Oh, I plan to be here, until the end when they figure it all out.
Oh, good. Okay,
So,
cool.
yeah.
Good luck with
Will you
that.
just be the
So-
floating head in a jar?
That's exactly. Part of this whole thing was just the experiment of getting my consciousness onto tape so that when we get to that point of just being able to transfer it in, they'll already have hours and hours of me speaking this kind of random bullshit. They'll be able to get my thought patterns out of this. It's cool.
God help whoever has that job.
Translating my brain onto whatever format they've,
That's a job for the new age.
copying my brain, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so taking my energy and making that live forever. Yes, that's what I'm looking forward to.
I think we've talked about that in previous episodes as well, that idea of downloading consciousness.
Mhm.
Right? And if it does just come down to energy, is that something that could possibly happen? Can we harness that power just like it's any other piece of data?
Well, and like the other thing here is also like the idea that our energy disappears is another kind of fallacy I think that we live under, right? Like I like to think that we live in a lossless universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where all of this energy is just being recycled. So the idea that, even our radiant energy is lost, I don't know if that's right. Like I think it still just transfers into some other, like maybe it goes into this other universe and that's what powers it going backwards. Who the fuck knows? Right. And it's actually our energy moving through this universe that powers the other universe's movement.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it's the interaction of this other universe moving through that animates and gives us, right. There's a lot of scientific proof to say that, without us here to perceive this universe, it wouldn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mind blown.
Going back to kind of the holographic theory where this existence doesn't technically really, like, I never actually touched these molecules that make up anything. Okay. It's just the fields of what animates this, making it perceive. And then, so somehow the nerves in my hand, which aren't actually touching the other particles, are able to perceive pressure and transfer that in electrical impulse to my brain, which goes, oh yeah, that's right there. I'm pushing on it. Ha ha ha. What? It just, yeah. And it's all just energy. It's all just energy, right? Condensed into a form of matter that I can squish.
Aaron, this is Alex from the alternate dimension.
Oh boy.
I have hacked our phone lines. I mean, I've hacked the phone line.
But we're on the internet.
I hung up on him.
Wait, you still have a landline?
The other dimension's pretty far behind. He's still on dial-up.
Wow, geez, yeah. That's why he's so glitchy today. That explains a lot.
I'm not sure why the fifth dimension sounds like a cave. That was a little weird.
The old cave dimension.
Oh, I like your mug there that you got, Aaron. The
Everyone can order one of these on our
coffee
website
mug.
at thesubvertmug.com.
I bet that beverage tastes better in that cup.
Well, it definitely tastes more thoughtful.
I like it. I like it.
Like somebody
Wonder what
really
it's
put some
taste what your
thought into
beverage
this
tastes
drink.
like.
Yeah. The taste of pure brain power right here. Yeah. It just seeps right into every drink that you put into the cup. It's amazing. It's the newest technology. Actually, it's nanotechnology in these cups that we've developed specifically in our labs here at the Subvert.
Oh, yes. We always forget to mention, we always underplay the research laboratory here at
we're modest.
The compound.
We're modest when it gets right down to it. So we don't like to puff up our...
Right. I think we should puff up everything.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, let's...
Nanotechnology, make your life better. Very cheap.
Well, I think my brain needs a break from this discussion about quantum entanglement and energy and multiple universes running backwards and looking at ghosts.
It will be an ongoing debate of what?
Hopefully nobody fell asleep through this entire show here. But if you're still alive, Hopefully you feel a little bit smarter. That's kind of the
Hey,
goal.
if you couldn't follow that conversation, then I have a quantum physics degree that you need to study for, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think people are going to buy that.
What? You don't want a quantum physics degree? It's very cheap.
Especially sold in that way. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But only
What
$99.95,
a salesman this guy is.
he's been drinking his brain juice.
Out of my brain cup.
Any closing thoughts?
Buy the cup. Cups are cool.
Buy the cup. I like it. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, use your energy wisely, I guess.
Yes,
Right? I like
absolutely.
to think maybe that might be the thing, is that, maybe that's how our existence is measured out in this bit, is how much energy we're allocated at the very beginning. And yeah, some people get a short amount of it and some people get more. So use it
wisely.
I like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and check out our weekly episodes as these come out. If you prefer the audio-only versions, you can subscribe to the podcast in any podcast app of choice: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We're on TuneIn and Stitcher and Google Podcasts everywhere. You can reach out to us for comments. Let us know what you want to hear. Maybe suggest a topic. We wouldn't mind hearing from you. We're on social media, on Twitter and Facebook, under the handle The Subvert Pod. You can also email us at thesubvert@hologramradio.org, or just go to hologramradio.org/contact. Fill out the contact form. Send us whatever questions you have, or drop down in the comments below. The whole spiel. That's all the time we have for this week. We'll see you next time, everybody.